And that's not to say that species are all exactly the same. Obviously, they're not. There's a huge variety of different animals on this planet that fill thousands and thousands of different niches, and are all built to behave in their specific niche that they've evolved to fit into. It's the science of ethology that studies behaviour in a different way to us, and ethologists are the ones out in the field that are studying species-specific behaviour. So they're looking at the general behaviour of dogs, the general behaviour of chimps. On average, cats do this. They also largely look at intrinsic behaviour and reflexive behaviour, whereas we're looking at learned behaviour and how the environment influences behaviour change of these animals. So, learning. Ethologists are very much more about species-specific and looking at behaviours that are common to a particular species as a whole, as opposed to us who are looking at individuals. So we might have a situation where an ethologist is out there studying wolves and they see this behaviour rolling over prey. They might put forward the hypothesis that the wolf is putting its scent on its kill. They might put out the hypothesis that the wolf is getting the scent of the kill on itself. Both might be true, one might be true. We've got no real way of knowing. They're really educated guesses. And here is my dog, my puppy, young Robin, doing a very similar behaviour with a dead worm. Whatever it is,
training for him.
He didn't have to learn this behaviour. As soon as he was presented with the stimulus, the cue to roll in something, as far as we're concerned, icky, then we see the behaviour pattern come out in a similar way that we see it come out in the wolf. And it's behavioural similarities like this that we can so easily be led down the understanding that a dog is a wolf in just a different physical body. And in some ways that's true, and in other ways that's very, very different. It's very, very untrue. It's going to lead us down a garden path to treat every dog like a wolf. But there are reflexive behaviours that are wired in that we see that are similar to these two species. And that's one of the kinds of behaviours that ethologists will focus on and look at. And it's actually interesting because once we believed that behaviours that we call intrinsic behaviours or reflexive behaviours, we used to think that they were pretty much set in stone, that they were not responsive to learning and change, but we actually now know they are. Fixed action patterns used to be a bit of jargon, a term that was used widely in both applied behaviour analysis schools of thought and also the ethologist schools of thought, and called fixed because they were basically, unresponsive to the influences of the environment. But nothing could be further from the truth. Fixed action patterns have now been renamed modal action patterns because while they are very stereotypic, they are influenced by the principles of learning. So learning and the ability to change our behaviour based on the information we get from the immediate environment is all about survival. As a Chihuahua cross mini Foxy here, as Quinn is, we come into this world and this is the body that we are in because we are a dog and because we are a particular kind of breed of dog, and that means that we come out in a form that is designed through evolution to get the most out of our environment. But where evolution leaves off, learning takes up, and the flexibility that we have, that learning gives us, allows us to survive well in the environment that we individually find ourselves in. So here's Robin again. Robin's probably about 11, 12 weeks old here, and he came with a very strong desire to bury good stuff. He wanted to be able to obviously put that away for safekeeping. Toys, I've not seen him bury food, but toys is his game, and this is one of his early burying of a special toy at home. Now, I cut off the video, but basically what he did for the next 2 minutes is he went over by the bed and he sat and he watched my other 4 dogs wander in and wander out, and you could see the wheels turning. And then he got himself up, he did a shake off, and he went and got the toy that he just buried there in the toy box. Like, not a good choice. And I switched the camera back on and followed him to see what he was going to do with it now.
Right.
Here he is, sussing it all out, trying to work out where this goodie is going to be safe. No one taught him. I didn't follow him around with a clicker in my hand. But this is an example of a intrinsic behaviour pattern. I know, right? No one's going to find it here. I think he even forgot it was there. That is being modified by the specific environment he finds himself in. So no one had to teach him to cache or bury his good stuff, but the environment had to tell him and had to teach him where a good choice was in this environment. So it's a great example. So the scientific study of behaviour. Behaviour is incredibly complex. Science has lots of different ways to look at behaviour and lots of reasons to study behaviour. And these scientific models of behaviour, of science and scientific study of behaviour, they just focus on different aspects of behaviour. So it's not as if one is right and one is wrong. The study of ethology and the study of behavioural analysis are focusing on 2 very, very different aspects of behaviour. And there's a lot of confusion for trainers out there, and definitely I had this confusion when I was first starting to understand the science of behaviour and the different ways that the information came to us from different sciences, because a lot of the time it sounded contradictory. It was contradictory. And basically we've got a situation where we're trying to compare apples and oranges. We're not able to take one school of thought and compare it with another when their point of view and the reason that they're focusing on the particular behaviour is very different. So inevitably their reason, the reason they will give for the behaviour cause, will also be very different. So there's different disciplines give us different points of view, and all of these scientific models have value for us as trainers, but it's important to understand the best one to put our focus on when it comes to using on a day-to-day basis with the people that come to us for help, and also in understanding and working out how to influence future behaviour. So here's just 4. These are drawings that I did of the blue-footed booby, and we've got 4 of the main models or schools of behavioural study. We've got ethology, we've got medical, the medical model, neurobiological model, and our favourite, the behaviourism. So the medical model is all about the cause of behaviour being a physical symptom. So a dog might be grouchy, we might say, and a dog might be aggressive because he's in physical discomfort. And many of us, every single one of us, when we're presented with a behaviour change in a dog that is labelled grumpy or aggressive, would first say, well, have you had a vet check? You know, is this dog in a good physical condition, or is he in pain? Because until we look at dealing with that, we're not, no matter how great we are as a trainer, we're not going to be able to really help him, because we've got to help him physically first. So we use the medical model, but we don't focus there. Ethology has lots of information for us. I want to know when I step in with a rhino, what sort of behaviours are precursors to the animal charging at me, because I want to get out of there. So I need to understand about rhinos, or I need to have someone who understands rhino behaviour. It makes very good sense if I'm going to work with a species that I haven't worked with before and I don't know much about, to read up on that species. How does this species eat? Is it a gorger? Or is it a forager? If it's a gorger, I might be in a situation where I can take in the best treats in the world, but it is not going to be motivated to eat them because it just ate yesterday, and I have to wait 2 or 3 days now until the digestive system passes that food through and its hunger is once again on board, so we can work with it. So that's a couple of examples. Neurobiology is an incredibly interesting field of study, and the neurosciences in general, so new. There's lots of information there about the different chemical changes in the brain and how they influence behaviour. We talk about brain structures and which area of the brain is in control of this, that or the other. And so they look at behaviour from the point of view of the side effect of changes of neurotransmitters, of chemicals and of hormones in the brain. And again, we know that those things will influence behaviour. But the thing with all of these schools of thought is that as trainers, we are dealing with an individual in front of us. And while we need to take into account each of these areas, we also need to understand, most importantly, we need to understand how the environment impacts behaviour. Because as we're going to see, the only way we impact an individual animal's behaviour is by modifying in some way the environment that we find the animal in. So our focus as trainers is all about understanding the behaviour of the individual animal. The individual animal that we're working with right here, right now. So the one that's in front of us, and we want to know how to change the individual animal's behaviour as effectively, as efficiently, and for me, as ethically as possible. So I want to be able to do it fast, I want to be able to do it cleanly, and I want to be able to do it in a way that does not harm the animal in question emotionally or physically. So let's look at cats. If I was working with a cat, and just say we were both working on a movie and they wanted a cat to run quickly across the set, we might think to ourselves, well, cats chase and cats are very keyed in on movement. So cats often, like this one here, get very worked up in chasing toys like laser pointers or lights. And so we could maybe easily get the behaviour that way very quickly.
Not too much, it'll tip over.
And we could train it up. And that could be the way that we could prompt the behaviour. But if we made the mistake of not trying this technique out with the animal in question, the cat that they have picked for the actual scene in the movie, before we actually head on to Spielberg's set, we might end up with something more like this. So one of the things that we think about, I know it's my cat, right? It's really funny. He just thinks it's so beneath him. One of the things that we need to think about is that while all cats, while all dogs, while most cats, while most dogs, while generally cats like to chase things, what about the animal that we're working with? Because for us, behaviour is the study of one. We have one individual animal, and while that individual may be a normal, your average cat or your average dog, it might also be, like Todd River it was here and is, an outlier. It might be not on the bell curve, might be one of those ones that is very different to average. And we've got to take that into account when we're dealing with the individual in front of us.